Okay, so let's start this off with a challenge. I challenge all of you to get up out of your seats, take your phone, and throw it as hard as you can against the floor. Okay, I see some crazy faces. A lot of you are probably thinking, I paid too much for this phone. If I throw it against the ground, it's going to shatter. Or if it shatters, it'll break, and then I can't call my friends, I can't call my family, at least until the next 2 weeks until I get home for Thanksgiving. Now, obviously, you guys are not alone. Society has become a lot more dependent on their mobile communication devices than they had been before. Everywhere you go, if you're walking down the street, you see someone walking and texting on their phone. If you're in a restaurant and you look to the table next to you, someone's playing a video game. If you're at a community event like a block party, someone will be dancing and on their phone at the same time. If you're at dinner with your family, unless you guys have rules, as mine does not, you can sit there and eat your food and watch your parents play games and wait for them to put down the phone so you can start to have a conversation. Unfortunately, telephones have changed from a luxury item to a necessity. Back when telephones first came out, people viewed them as something that they might have had to save up for. Now it's something that as soon as you turn 9 in some cases, or 13 in other cases, your parents automatically get you a telephone because they need to know where you are and what you're doing, and you also feel the need so that you can connect with your friends. Now, all of this started, as many of you know, in 1876 with Alexander Graham Bell creating the first telephone, which looked like this. The second telephone was called the candlestick telephone, and that was made up of the base, the stem, the mouthpiece that you would talk into, and the receiver that you would put up to your ear. Both of these phones were mainly used for businesses as they were very expensive and they were connected onto local lines, so while you could call other people, you could only call maybe 2 or 3 other telephones who were connected on the same line as yours. It wasn't until the 1930s that the rotary telephone came out that it became mainstream to have a telephone. Families began buying rotary telephones to put into their household, and that began the initial integration of telephones into everyday life. After World War II, society became a lot more independent and more mobile, and the AT&T Labs corporate website cites the first mobile phone as being a car phone, which was released in 1946. These phones will be put under the dashboard, and then you can essentially use a cell phone while you're in the car and just talk to people on the go. Samir Kumar and Christopher Zahn, who were writers for the Technovation Journal for the University of St. Thomas in Minneapolis, Minnesota, cited that AT&T and Motorola were the first company to create the groundwork for cellular phone systems. So they created the Advanced Mobile Phone System in 1983. So that's essentially all the wiring and all the telephone towers that you see today that are needed in order to create cellular connectivity. Business Insider cited Motorola as releasing the first official cell phone in 1984 called the Motorola Dynatac, which, as many of us call now, would be the brick telephone. From then on, Nokia and Motorola began cranking out their cellular devices. Most of them were known as the bar phones, which were just tiny little cell phones, and they had minimal functionality. You can make calls, change settings. You couldn't really play games, or they had little minor games. So there wasn't really much to the cell phone until 2002 when BlackBerry released their BlackBerry RIM 850. This phone was the first telephone to perfect the web-enabled feature. There had been cell phones who were releasing web-enabled telephones since 1999. However, BlackBerry incorporated web internet usage into their phones in order to create emails and surfing the internet and use it for things that society actually wanted to use it for and actually needed to use it for. From then on, BlackBerry really dominated the industry, as many of us know. Everywhere you looked, every business person had a BlackBerry. They created the full physical keyboard on telephones that was a staple for cellular devices for most of the 2000s. In 2007, Apple released their first iPhone, and in 2009, Samsung released the Galaxy phones. These two were released, and they essentially recreated the entire structure of how a cell phone was supposed to look. These two cell phones really created the standard for having a flat cell phone that was touchscreen, and it eliminated the need for a full physical keyboard. So companies really understood that what people wanted out of cellular devices were items that could do as much, if not more, as their computers at home. So I want to make this clear. My shift is not only on phones, but is also on the dependency of the public and their cellular devices. Neil Postman, who is an American cultural and media critic, warns people of who he calls technophiles. Technophiles are one-eyed prophets who see only what new technologies can do and are incapable of imagining what they will undo. So as we know, technology has done amazing things for us. We can connect with our friends who are across campus. We can connect with friends who are across country going to other schools. We can see what's going on in other parts of the world. But what we might not notice is that all of this technology that aids us in our communication really hinders our own communication skills and also our attentiveness. In a survey done by the Pew Research Center, they said that 1 in 5 cell phone owners say their phone has made it at least somewhat harder to forget about work at home or on the weekends, to give people their undivided attention, or to focus on a single task without being distracted. So when you're sitting at home on a weekend and you're trying to relax, your cell phone is right there to remind you of all the things you have coming up in the next week. If you're talking with your friend one-on-one, your cell phone is right there to provide an outlet for you to temporarily retract yourself from the situation that you're in and play a game or send a text message. If you're sitting in your dorm and you have homework to do, your cell phone is right there, again providing the outlet for you to play another video game, send a text message, check your social media. So while mobile devices, So if we can remember back towards the beginning of the semester, Sherry Turkle cited in chapter 2 of our textbook that people really reach for their phones whenever they feel uncomfortable. So if you feel the smallest gap in a conversation, if you're talking to your friend and then you have 3 seconds of silence, and then all of a sudden one of you is going to reach for your telephone because you feel socially awkward in your situation that you have to retreat to your cell phone in order to make yourself not feel awkward anymore. So while mobile devices have allowed us to connect with other parts of the world, it is at the cost of our own face-to-face interaction. Our dependency essentially marks how humans are becoming less self-sufficient and more reliable on technology to perform basic tasks such as communication. So while cell phones may have been the best thing to happen to humans, we need to learn how to use them as an accessory instead of a necessity. We won't be able to really function as a well-balanced and self-sufficient species until we can learn that cell phones are not needed in our everyday life, but instead there to aid us in our basic communication and whatever other needs we need them to be for. Thank you.